beautiful people? It is me, EL, your favorite columnist here at Blackout Magazine, and I have an amazing guest with me here today. You guys are going to be as excited as I am to dive into this awesome conversation we're about to have. I would like to introduce to you guys Fernando Z. Lopez from the National LGBTQ Task Force. How are you this afternoon?
You know what? I'm doing great, and it's really good to chat with you.
Awesome, awesome. I was looking at your bio, and I must say that I am like super in awe, impressed, all of that. Like I might be boy fanning right now.
You're too kind.
Could you tell me how you got into your advocacy?
Sure. I have an interesting background. I think my on my mom's side of the family, we are Jewish immigrants and refugees who came here from Russia and Austria to escape persecution and death. And on my dad's side of the family, were Mexican American immigrants who worked in the fields and the packing plants. Migrant field working family. And so I grew up with these very like different parents from two different worlds who really informed me about, this is what the world's going to look like and how you're going to be treated because you're the product of immigrants, because you're Jewish, because you're Mexican, because you are both. And there's going to be people who won't like you because of just your identity and existing. And so I think a lot of it really started there. And then my brother ended up having cancer at a young age and becoming quadriplegic and suffered brain damage. And so between experiencing a brother who had different disabilities and coming from this intersectional background, like the framework was always there of how to fight for yourself, how to fight for other communities that people perceive to be different. And I don't know that there was ever an in for me. And so I remember the bullying and harassment starting at a very young age. So having to be an advocate for myself at a very young age, and despite as compassionate and supportive as my parents were about other issues, I ended up becoming homeless at the age of 15 because of my sexual orientation and gender identity. So I've always had to fight. I've always been a fighter, and put myself through school, put myself in college, and got connected to LGBT organizations right away in college, and just started volunteering. And it was like every injustice that I saw around me, I just sort of asked myself, like, what can I do to help, and how can I start making a difference? And so it started in college, and then I was always volunteering as a young person in elementary and junior high and high school as well. But really, my LGBT advocacy started in college, and then I went on to meet the person who would become my husband. And right away, it was the early 2000s. We realized that we didn't have access to insurance or employment protections, and we didn't have the ability to get married. And so I started volunteering for an organization called Marriage Equality USA, and it just kind of went from there. Like, next thing you know, I was with Equality California and doing stuff with Victory Fund, and started doing stuff with the task force. Actually, 21 years ago was the first time I started working around with the task force.
Wow.
And it just kept going from there. And I found a passion. I found a way to give back to community, and I haven't looked back.
Like I said, I'm in awe. I'm in awe. That's oh man. That's like I know right now in this time that we're in, like especially around the discussions that have been had um as far as ICE and marriage equality and trans rights right now is like really let me tell you, every day I'm stressed. I'm stressed. I'm stressed, and so um, I appreciate and am thankful for the work that you do.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm stressed every day too. My family is afraid to go to the grocery store. or go to church or drive down the street to visit, because of what's happening around immigration and border patrol. And we kind of grew up in that environment too. I came out on the lighter side of my family, and we know what's happening to folks who are perceived to be Latino, brown, and growing up in a border community. There's always been harassment on the part of immigration and border patrol, and I grew up with that sort of harassment around me every day. And to see the escalation, to see the way that it's impacting my family's lives and our community's lives every single day, and just the stress and anxiety behind it, and to watch the rollback of rights, and the attacks in the trans community, immigrants, the threat to marriage equality. We're in this really difficult moment. And I think the more that we can see how connected our struggles are, the the more that we can turn towards each other for support, for skill, for tactics, for comfort. I think that's how we're going to get through this, is really understanding that we're all in this big giant fight together.
Absolutely. Um, what does and I read in your bio that you do a lot of workshops and speaking, and one of your passions is showing about practical application of intersectional social justice. So, what does that look like in real time?
I think what it looks like is really diverse depending on the specific topic or area that we're looking at, right? You can look at economic justice, for instance. And what does that mean when you're talking about equity for the immigrant community or for the trans community? And so, what protections are we talking about putting in place from an economic justice perspective? And how are we ensuring that we're looking at the policies and practices that are going to make the most sense for folks who are trans, who are immigrant, who are gender diverse, and making sure that we understand what those needs are and then putting them into actual policy application. And is that at a municipal level? Is it a county level? Is it at a state level? Or is it a federal level? And understanding each of those distinct approaches, and knowing what conversation we need to have in which room. If you're talking about environmental justice and climate justice, how are you understanding how does that disproportionately impact LGBTQ people? What does it mean if there's a natural disaster and trans folks or LGBT folks are turned away from those shelters because of who they love or how they look? And so I think that really, whether it's, again, immigration justice or reproductive justice, if we're not looking at those from an intersectional lens, we're leaving people behind. And so it's really incumbent upon us as LGBTQ people to be in those spaces, to advocate for our communities around each of those specific policy positions, and to do the community organizing around that, in the public education as well, right? To make sure that folks understand how we are impacted in our communities. And so we as LGBTQ people can advocate for each of these different intersectional positions, from a place that's actually going to impact those who are the most marginalized and the most discriminated, right? That the more identities you layer on top of that, if you're neurodivergent, if you have a disability, if you're a senior, if you're an immigrant, if you're a person of color, those impacts are that much more likely to take effect on you. And so we need to be able to understand what those issues are and how we can best advocate for ourselves.
I dig it. I dig it. Um, Now you are the person with the plan for creative change this year. And I know you can't talk a whole, you can't be specific about, especially in this time that we're in, security is important, right?
Yeah.
And so I know you can't really speak about specifics, but could you speak a little bit about, what that's going to look like for people that are going to be present this year?
Yeah, safety and security is always a concern for I think anyone, especially if you're coming from a targeted community and a marginalized community, especially those of us from communities that don't have a great experience with law enforcement. Who's often told that they're the ones keeping us safe, and we know that historically isn't always the case. Um, we're no stranger to understanding what's happening right now, right? When we're seeing ICE and HSI and FBI and all of these different federal agencies and Army National Guard coming into cities and states and terrorizing and brutalizing folks, people are afraid. And we've all seen what's been happening in DC over the last several months with the occupation. And so there's a lot of elevated concern of what are we doing to keep each other safe. And so first and foremost, I'll say, the ethos of the task force of creating change is we keep us safe. We know that we, us together in community, one another in relationship is how we best keep each other safe. And so our safety and security model starts there. It is people from our community with expertise in our community, in the LGBT movement, in the reproductive justice movement, coming together to set forward the plans with intention at every single possible level throughout the entirety of creating change from start to finish about how we're making sure that we are being intentional about keeping each other safe from top to bottom. That looks like a whole bunch of stuff. You'll see things like, it's a private event in a private space, the private venue. I know a lot of folks are worried about ICE and immigration and what that looks like. And I can tell you that when you're at a private space, at a private venue, at a private event, it requires a judicial warrant, a signed judicial warrant. I can tell you that we don't collect anyone's immigration status. I can tell you that the hotel doesn't collect immigration status. And so, those aren't pieces of information that we share. And that if ICE or anything like that was trying to get into the building, they would have to come forward and present a signed judicial warrant. I can tell you that we have layers and layers and layers of safety and security folks engaged at the venue, outside the venue, and all throughout. I can't give you the exact specifications of all of that, but I can tell you that I feel confident in what this team is doing, in the experts and the consultants and the external organizations and partners that are stepping up and stepping in and volunteering their time, their talent, their skills, and all of the things that we have learned as a movement. Not just over the last 9 months of everything that we've been going through under this current administration, but the decades and decades and decades of experience that our movement has in learning the tactics and the strategies of how we're going to keep each other safe in these large scale environments like what we're bringing together. So I feel really confident in what the team is doing. And that said, I also want to keep it real because we know that our constitutional rights are being violated every single day in cities all across the country. And that's not just in DC, right? We've seen what's happened in Chicago, in Memphis. We've seen what's happened in Denver, in Houston, in LA, here in San Diego, where I'm currently at. These issues are happening all across the country. And so my recommendation is for folks is look at what all these cities are doing. Look at the organizing that's happening on the ground in Memphis, that's happening on the ground in LA, that's been happening on the ground in DC. And I love how each city is learning from each other.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep doing that at creating change. And the other piece of advice I would say is, folks are asking about how do you know your rights? We want to know your rights. There's so many organizations out there, whether it's your local ACLU, ACLU National. There's a lot of immigrant rights organizations and local community organizing organizations that are putting out continuous know your rights trainings, workshops, Zoom seminars, putting out Instagram memes and things with educational content. It's up to each of us to learn that information, to learn our rights so we can best protect ourselves, our neighbors, our communities. It should be a best practice that we're all engaged in right now and every day because we see what's been happening under this administration. So the more that each of us prepare ourselves in advance of being in DC together, the safer we're all going to be, not only when we're in DC, but when we're walking around in our own neighborhoods, in our own communities, in cities all across the country right now.
Definitely agree. Knowledge is power. Know your
Knowledge is
rights.
power.
Know your rights. Yes. I also was reading up on your bio, and it said that you believe that art and advocacy um would together is a powerful tool for change. And why do you feel that way?
On top of being a huge nerd, I like to think that I'm an artist as well. Um, I went to Performing Art Academy. I draw, I play the piano, I sing, I'm a poet. I was raised around queer poets and artists. And I've seen the power of art, of poetry, of storytelling. And it's one thing when we can sit back and explain the data and explain the research, right? We need our academics, we need our nerds, we need our researchers, we absolutely do. But there's something beautiful that happens when we're able to tell our story through poetry, through song, through joy, uh, that doesn't just help us feel seen, right? Like we get to see ourselves reflected in that poetry, in that music, in that movie, in that TV show, right? Like, and
Right.
there's something powerful about that and how we tell our stories because that's what really makes the difference. It's not just the data, it's helping people connect at an emotional level to the deep realities of what our lived experience is. And the way we do that through art, for me, is one of the most compelling ways that we can educate ourselves and the rest of the world about the authenticity of our lived experience. When I see artists out there like Mila Jam, incredible transgender artist talking about her experience and the experience of trans folks, or like Snow the Product, a Latin artist out of Southern California talking about the Latino and immigrant and lesbian experience. Like, there's just something there that we get to connect with at a deeper level and helps to move folks. So I know we do a lot of that at Creating Change as well. There's a lot of cultural organizing that
Mhm.
happens. You look at the pride movement across the country and around the world and how they elevate artists and entertainers and musicians and poets. And there's something just really inspiring about bringing all of that art together for the purpose of advocacy.
I love it. I am a nerd myself. I'm a book nerd. I'm really big on reading, and that has been my journey. This past, well, I'm in my second year. I also do the book reviews for Blackout Magazine, and so this has been my second year of my journey into um bringing more black and brown queer authors to the people so that they know that we are here, that we are out here, and that there are people who are telling our stories where we can see ourselves in things, which I didn't have growing up, right? And so I think that's definitely an important piece of things.
Absolutely. And we didn't get to always see ourselves reflected in literature, in film, in music, and now we have more opportunity for that. And though while I feel like we're in a bit of a backlash phase right now, that's where it really is up to us to continue investing in our own local community, invest in local authors, invest in local poets, and invest in local artists and musicians. They're the ones doing it every single day. Make sure you're supporting your local drag queens. They're artists too. And I think that's one of the beautiful things that also happens at Creating Change is we have so much space for poets and authors. You're going to see some really exciting authors at Creating Change this year, some great poets. And we also uplift a lot of the local folks. And because we're in DC this year, you're going to see a lot of local artists, musicians, drag queens, dancers. So I hope folks get to enjoy all of that too.
I'm excited because this is my very first Creating Change.
Oh no, you're gonna love it.
Yes, it's my very first one. I've wanted to come before, but every time something happens that my schedule doesn't align with the time, and so I wasn't able to. But this year, I am going to be in the building. I'm super excited about coming. Super
Oh,
excited.
you're gonna have a blast. Creating change is such a transformative experience, and I think that's true for anyone that's ever been. I went to my first Creating Change 21 years ago. It was in Oakland, and I haven't missed one since. It was just a life changing experience. I joked that I'm a nerd, right? And I always told people that creating change was my pride because it's where I got to be my most authentic self. I could be a nerd, I could be queer, and I could find all of these interests in all these other folks who were deeply dedicated and invested in the movement. And where else on the planet, nowhere else on the planet, are you going to be around 2 to 3 thousand other LGBT folks who've dedicated their lives to social justice and social change? And it's just such a beautiful once in a lifetime experience that once you have that, you're like, oh, I'm always going to come back, and I always have.
I am I am super excited now. Like I was already super excited. Now I'm like double super excited. I can't wait. I cannot wait. I'm just ready. Um if you like if you could speak to our youth right now, right? What would your advice be to them um in this time? Because I know a lot of our youth, a lot of us adults, youth, all of us are really stressed or scared or just frustrated. What would you say to encourage them in this time?
I think a few things. So our theme this year is unstoppable, and there's a reason for that. It's because if you look at the long arc of history, the reality is that queer people, LGBTQ people, two spirit folks, or transgender folks, we've always always been around. And we've been through this before. We've fought through this before. Our people have fought through fascism and rises in authoritarianism and the criminalization of our community, the pathologizing our community. We've lived through it before. We've fought through it before. And our Stonewall veterans in particular, they're still with us. They're still here. They survived. They fought through so much persecution, imprisonment, targeted by law enforcement, state sanctioned violence. And everything that we have today is a product of our elders fighting for us when they had less than we do now. And it's really hard to remember that because it's not like they teach our history in schools across the country, right? It's hard for us to have access to that history. And so, if I could say anything to our young people, is that I know it sucks. I know it's terrible and I know it's scary. And those feelings are so real and so valid. And what gives me hope is that we've survived it before and we survived it together. And so, if we can continue to learn the lessons of the people who came before us and we can continue this intergenerational support, because you know what? I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm tired. I'm tired, but I'm in it. And the elders, the folks who've been in it longer than me, they're tired, but they're in it. And we need that young person. We need young people and that new energy and that new blood because you inspire us to keep going. You give us the motivation to keep going and the new energy and the new insight and the new innovations that our young people are bringing to this movement is so needed right now. And so when you're stressed, when it all feels like too much, turn off social media, take a break, take a pause. You got to take care of yourself if you're going to sustain this for the long haul. You really need to take care of yourself because we need you not just today, not just tomorrow, but we're going to need you in 3 months, in 3 years, in 30 years to still be in this fight, not just taking care of yourself now, but the next generation to come. So if you're a young person out there, just know that we've lived through this before and we're going to live through it again and we're going to do it together.
Awesome. I love that. All right, last question. I mean, you are a person of many talents and a very busy person, clearly. What do you do for self-care? What do you do to just regenerate, unplug and refill that cup?
So that's a beautiful question. I try to take my own advice and I try to unplug from social media as much as I can. I love to cook. I love to run. So I love to go on hikes and running. And I love to play the piano. Let's see if I can show it to you. I've got a piano right here. That's my
Ooh,
piano.
nice.
So
Nice.
I play the piano and I sing. So I try to just go into my other hobbies that take me out of it. And I meditate. I take a lot of time to just tune out the world, and just have some nice quiet meditation time for myself and reflect on peace and what I would like to see in the world.
Awesome. I like that. Well, thank you so much, Fernando, for sitting down with me and chopping it up. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your work. Thank you so much. Yo, if y'all are not
I was gonna say thank you so much. I love your energy. I'm so excited this is your first time, and we're gonna hang out. I got to show you around. I'm so excited because you're gonna
yes,
be that much more amped up when you're creating change.
yes, I cannot wait. Hey, if you guys are not registered to come out to create and change, it is not too late. Y'all need to do that so y'all can come hang out with me because it's my first time and I'll be there. And of course, anywhere I go, I'm taking y'all with me. So the camera will be with me. So come on out. Let's vibe. Let's connect. All right. And so until the next time, y'all, be easy. And if you're not subscribers of Blackout Magazine, I don't know what y'all doing. It is where you want to know where we going, who we talking to, and what we're doing. So make sure that y'all subscribe right now. Like right now. Leave now and go subscribe. All right?
That's
Till
right.
next time.